Have you ever noticed that an argument is almost never about the thing? You can usually spot it afterwards. You can replay it in the car, or you're lying in bed, or you think, well, hang on, how did we get from there to here? Because it started with something small, genuinely small. Then 20 minutes later, someone's saying something about respect, and somebody else has left the room, and the small thing hasn't been mentioned in a quarter of an hour. I want to walk you through mine in detail, because I've been thinking about the shape of it. And I think it's the same shape every time. It started with a haircut. My son got his haircut and he came into the kitchen and I said something. Well, now I want to be careful here, because this is the bit everyone gets wrong when they tell these stories. They tell you what they meant, they don't tell you what they said. And what I meant was something like, well, that's different. I'm surprised. Tell me about it. What I said was shorter than that, and the tone had something in it. I know it did, because I heard it as it come out. He heard judgment, and he was right to, because that's what the sentence sounded like from where he was standing. And where he was standing is the only place that he could hear it from. He said something back, not much, and then he left the room. And here's what happened in me, and it happened fast. First I felt bad, and then, well, for about 4 seconds later, I felt annoyed that I felt bad. And the second feeling is an interesting one, because it's where the disagreement actually started. Not in the haircut. Stop and look at that for a moment, because it is genuinely odd. I felt bad, and that's a normal response to upsetting someone you love. That's the system working, isn't it? But then I got annoyed about it. Why would you get annoyed at your own guilt? Because guilt, if you sit in it, says something about you. It says that you were careless. It says you were the one who started it. And there's a version of me that finds that unbearable, the implication of the guilt. So annoyance shows up to move the story somewhere more comfortable. And where it moves to is, well, he overreacted. Which notice, we've gone to a different argument entirely. We've gone from a haircut to a question about whether his reaction was proportionate. And nobody agreed to change the subject. It just happened slightly in about 4 seconds inside my head.
So I found him later and I said something about respect. And I want to be honest about this. I still think the underlying point was fair. If someone says something clumsy to you, walking out isn't the only option available. That's a reasonable thing for a father to say to a 19-year-old. I was right about the line, but I lost the conversation along the way. I think when I look back, for a long time, I couldn't hold both of those at once, because in my head, being right was the thing that determined how things should go. If my point was fair and landed badly, then, hey, the problem was him. And that's the assumption I want to take apart, because, well, it's wrong. And it cost me many years of conversations. Here's what I used to believe, and I believed it very sincerely. I thought that conversations went badly because someone was unreasonable. And since I'd checked my own reasoning carefully, then, well, I'm quite good at checking my own reasoning, and the unreasonable party is usually the other one, right? I was wrong, and I was wrong in a specific way. I was treating a conversation like an argument in a document, as though the job was to establish the correct position. And once established, the correct position would do the work. But a conversation isn't a position, it's like a sequence. It's a reaction to a reaction to a reaction. And every link in that chain is someone deciding what the last thing meant, which means that you can be completely right and yet lose every single link. So here's what I actually think went wrong. And it's not just this conversation, I'm broadening to the bigger one, because it took me years to see it. When I went back in and I said the thing about respect, I was trying to do about 4 separate jobs in one sentence. The first job was repair. I wanted him to know that, hey, we're all right. And the thing between us was still intact. That's a real need, and that was probably the strongest one. Job 2 was accountability. I wanted him to own his bit, the walking out. And job 3 was like teaching. I wanted him to learn something for next time because, well, I'm his dad and that's the reflex. Job 4, and this is the sneaky one, agreement. I wanted him to say that I was right, not just behave differently to, I think, concede. 4 jobs into one sentence. And here's the thing about doing 4 jobs at once. They don't share, they actively cancel. Repair requires me to be soft. Accountability requires me to be firm. Teaching requires him to be receptive. And wanting agreement requires him to be wrong. You cannot deliver soft and firm in the same breath. And the listener has to pick one, and they always pick the one that's threatening because that's what listeners do. So you heard job 2 and job 4, which bundled together sounded like, well, you were bad and you should admit it. And job 1, the one that I actually cared about, never really arrived at all. Now, I want to put a weight on the other side of this because there's a version of what I'm saying here that's rubbish, and I don't want to be accused of it fairly. The rubbish version is never say the hard thing, like always prioritize a relationship and keep the peace. That's not it. That's conflict avoidance. The boundary was legitimate. It stays legitimate. He does need to hear at some point that leaving the room is a choice with a cost, like we all do. But what I'm saying is narrower, like all 4 jobs are valid. They just can't travel together simultaneously. And if you insist on sending them together because that feels efficient, because you've only got one conversation, because you don't want to have it twice, then you deliver none of them. My lesson is to pick one job and do that one. Let the others wait. And so the order matters. So let me argue for it. Repair goes first, always, because it's the only one that makes the others possible. Nobody has ever learned anything from someone that they're bracing against. Accountability lands on a person that feels safe, and it bounces off someone who feels attacked. So repair isn't the soft option, it's the load-bearing one. Accountability comes second and separately, like it could be even a different conversation, possibly a different day, but it's phrased as a question, not a verdict. Some of the greats that I've worked with have so often phrased things in questions. And because a verdict invites a defense and a question invites a look, teaching should come third, like if at all. Honestly, most of the teaching happens by the first 2 going well. The lesson isn't in the experience of being repaired with. Like you really have to say it. An agreement, perhaps let that one go entirely. This is the hardest, and I still often fail at it. Like you don't need them to concede. You need the behavior to change and the relationship to hold. Conceding is a thing I want for me. It's not part of the job. One more piece, because I got this wrong for years too. I used to think cooling off was avoidance. Like if you walked away from a disagreement, you were ducking it. And the mature thing was to stay in the room and sort it out. I don't quite think that anymore. Cooling off does something specific. It lets the change stop. Remember the sequence, like reaction to reaction to reaction. And every link is someone interpreting the last thing at speed. Nobody interprets while they're activated. And that's just what happens to a person when their heart rate is up. The gap is where the interpreting stops being automatic. And this is the condition, because without it, cooling off is avoidance. You have to come back, both of you, and each own your part. Not one person magnanimously forgiving the other, like both. If nobody comes back, then you didn't cool off, you just stopped. So next time it happens, and maybe it happens this week, and perhaps over something like the size of a haircut, try this. Notice the second feeling, not the first one. The first one is honest. The second one is the thing that changes the subject. And perhaps if you decide to go back in, count the jobs that you're carrying. If there's more than one, then put 3 of them down. Like do repair. The rest can wait. It'll still be there. It always is. Best to you. Chris out.